everybody. Whoever guesses that tune that I was playing around with, they win a prize. But this is a random musicology moment with Goldwasser Jazz. Today we're going to be talking about a cool book that I found. I'm going to put this down so you can see it. But the outside cover says, the Steinway Collection. And inside this book, we have, and I'm gonna do this as old librarian style. Oops, splitting pages there. This is the Steinway Collection of paintings by American artists, together with prose portraits of great composers by James Huneker. And this is a book that was gifted to me. It's copyrighted to 1919, so this is still when Steinway's making an early name for themselves in the country, but have established themselves as a strong name in the piano industry. But this is a book that they sent to their artists at the time, and it is limited to, let me find this. This is where it gets kind of cool. So the book itself was limited to 5,000 copies. And this book of those 5,000 is number 409. And this was gifted to my great-grandfather, David Goldwasser, who was a concert pianist in the early Atlanta years. He later went on to be a part of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, and my great-great-grandmother gifted the concert Steinway that they use there today. But this book, especially cool, has these really unique photos, not photos, but really well-mounted portraits. I'm going to come to a nice one. I really like the Beethoven example. So here we come up to the Beethoven segment, and we turn to Beethoven's page, and on one side we have Beethoven in Nature, an American portrait by N.C. Wyeth, and also copyright 1919. And then on the next page, we have just writing about Beethoven. So I'm going to read a little bit from this one, because I think this is, there's some interesting stuff in here about Beethoven. Ludwig van Beethoven was a profound lover of nature in all her phases. He gloried in the sunshine and did not fear the shade. Once he angrily refused an umbrella, preferring to walk bareheaded in a rainstorm. The first man who marched through the London streets with an open umbrella was mobbed. But in Vienna, the composer of the Heroic Symphony was looked upon as suspiciously eccentric for not carrying one. Other days, other ways. He incurred, too, the disreputable title of Republican because in company with Goethe, he did not doff his hat to royalty. At Baden, when in search of lodging, he asked, "How is this? Where are your trees?" "We have none." "Then the house won't do for me. I love a tree more than a man." He said of himself, "No man on earth loves the country more. Woods, trees, and rocks give the response which man requires. Every tree seems to say, 'Holy, holy.' Anyone who has an idea of country life can make for himself the intentions of the author without any titles. This particularly applies to his Sixth Symphony, the Pastoral, of which he said, 'Not a picture, but something in which are expressed the emotions aroused in men by the pleasures of the country, or in which some feelings of country life are set forth.' It may be remarked in passing that he did not disdain the imitation in tones of natural sounds. The same Pastoral Symphony, with its serenity, its suggestion of open air, innocent merrymaking, the singing of birds, the sun and thunder, and the realistic storm, the hymn of thanksgiving and the joyous peasants footing a dance, it is not, after all, a perfect specimen of program music." So this type of writing, this prose in the early 1900s, is very floral, and it fits with the early musicology of the time. So musicology really got its, spearheaded movement beginnings in the late 1800s, really in Vienna, after the deaths of great composers like Beethoven. They really started to dive in and learn about the story of all that was left behind. So I want to read one more quote from Beethoven. It's on the next page that I really, really liked. Where was it? Oh, yes. Beethoven never missed his daily work when living in Vienna. His bodyservant Michael Kren has told us of the last summer spent by the composer in his brother's house in Gneitzendorf, and quoted by Grove. He spent much time in the open air, from 6 in the morning till 10 at night, roaming about the fields, with or without his hat, and his sketchbook in hand, shouting and flourishing his arms, completely carried away by the inspiration of ideas. One of his favorite proverbs was, "The morning air has gold to spare." I like Beethoven, at least the stories behind him, because they were fresh enough that a lot of them carried on. And one of them in particular, that goes with the story of nature in Beethoven, is there was a small kind of cabin composing hut that he had near Vienna. And there was one day he was working, and there was a tree that he wanted to look at while he was composing. So instead of moving his table closer to the door where he could see out, to see the tree, he was frustrated by the fact that he couldn't see the tree from where his desk was. So he proceeds to knock a hole out in the wall of his hut. And the landlord comes by and says, "Beethoven, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I wanted to see the tree." And after learning some more about his love of nature, I think that makes sense. Beethoven was a lovely madman and wrote some interesting music. Farther in this book, we come across just some more of these portraits. Like, for example, we do have Mozart in here. It's kind of led by, a nice little flowery framing. I don't know if we can see that okay. I'm kind of working in the dark here. Again, with the portrait being portrayed, this one is The Death of Mozart, which, similarly about Mozart's music, the stories behind these composers aren't always as bright and, celebrated as we know them today. So many people, at least I've told this fact to a couple of people, and I always get an interesting reply. So Mozart was a child prodigy, and he spent his early years being toured around Europe, showing off to all the great masters his great skill, and it was him and his father on the road. And that's tough when you are that young. So tough that Mozart and his father did not have the greatest of relationships. And the wonderful song that we know, Eine kleine Nachtmusik, bum, ba bum, ba 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 bum, was written on the day that his father died. So it's a little bit gruesome, and it's a little bit, kind of heavy and dark, but it's still a song that's celebrated as he felt a personal sense of liberation. Another fun fact about Mozart is when he was in Salzburg, at the age of 8 years old, when he was studying at the monastery, learning music and the above, the required lunch was 1/8 of a liter of red wine per day, and Stiegel, the beer brewery in Salzburg, and Stiegel beer soup. So I think that if we were given this option of a diet as an 8-year-old boy learning music, I'd say we'd have a nice head start on what we were learning. So I think that's about all that I'm going to talk about from this book. It does, other artists in here are going to be Schubert, and we have Mendelssohn, we have Liszt, we have Rubenstein, we have a lot of really cool composers and some cool early musicology about all of them. Berlioz, and what else do we have in here? It's very fun. So my 4 years at the conservatory, I got exposed to some of the backsides of some of these stories. So throughout these videos, I'm going to kind of give little snippets of my time overseas. And if you have any questions about the process, going to a European conservatory and what that's like versus the American system, feel free to ask. I'm always more than happy to share about my time overseas, and thanks for looking at the Steinway Collection with me today. And please, share, like, subscribe, do all the above, and I will see you guys again soon. Have a good one.